And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, direct from Greece, it is the one and only Glenn Kirschner, former 30-year federal prosecutor serving in the U.S. Army and JAG Corps. You see him as a legal analyst on MSNBC and NBC, and all things Justice Matters. He's got a YouTube. He's got podcasts. It's Justice Matters merch. It's Glenn Kirschner. Nice to see you, Glenn.
Hey, Dean. Great to be with you.
You need a merch shop. Do you have a page just of merch that you can sell?
I have a merch shop. You know, when I started my YouTube channel, Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner, YouTube has a feature where they'll just automatically put together a merch shop for you. So I do have a merch shop. Yeah. I
gotta get my numbers up right now. Now you have a huge following. You deserve it. So let's talk about, it's a lot of developments in the last few days with Donald Trump, the Mike Pence thing that we learned a short time ago. But the big news, and I have to be honest, I have not been reading closely a lot of the developments among Trump because I'm so burnt out. I'm so numb from this whole experience. But this seems to be actually significant that there's an audio recording of him talking at Bedminster's golf course in New Jersey in July 2021 about some plans to attack Iran. And he acknowledges that I'd love to show you more. That's what we're getting sense, but I know I can't because it's classified, but he's still talking about it. What can you share? What do you take from this?
Yeah, so this is evidentiary manna from heaven for federal prosecutors, because what he has done is he's put himself right smack in the middle of a potential espionage charge, a crime under Chapter 37 of Title 18, that is the Espionage Act. It becomes pretty clear that he mishandled national defense information, which is a criminal charge under the Espionage Act, and looks like the feds have an audio recording of him doing so. You know, it's so important for so many reasons, because first of all, Dean, we've all seen Donald Trump endlessly prattle on about how he declassified documents with his mind, or how when he took them from the White House, they automatically became declassified. Well, first of all, automatic declassification and telepathic declassification are not things. But the important thing from a prosecutor's perspective is he has made those statements. Now we have him caught on an audio recording making a contradictory statement 6 months after he left the White House, saying, I've got this document here, secret, classified secret. So we know it exists because the feds know precisely what document he was referring to. And it has to do with a potential military strike against Iran, national defense information. And he says to his audience, none of whom have security clearances and are allowed to hear one word of what's in that classified document. You know, I'd like to show it to you, but it's classified. Dean, you know, I know that it makes him feel good in the moment to say things to these faux news networks and on his third-rate social media platform about declassifying things with his mind, et cetera. And he can get away with it in the court of public opinion. But man, what career prosecutors will do with this is they will play for the jury statement number one, saying, I declassified everything with my mind. Statement number two, 6 months after he left office, I'd like to show you this national defense information, but it's classified. And the jury will start looking at their watches saying, when can we retire to deliberate so we can vote guilty? So he has bought himself potentially an espionage charge. And Dean, if the Department of Justice expects others to keep our nation's secrets secret, we have to prosecute him, and we have to do it now. This is big ticket criminal misconduct. This compromises our national security. And let me go on record as saying June will be the month we have all waited for.
This June, not June in the future. This June. Okay, Glenn Kirschner said this June, folks, and it is June 2nd. So, Glenn, what about, you mentioned Espionage Act, and everyone thinks when we hear, the layperson hears espionage, you think about someone selling secrets for money. I just want you to touch on the fact that it's still a crime if he didn't sell it to his buddy Putin or someone else.
There are lots of different ways to violate Chapter 37 of Title 18. A whole bunch of different federal laws fall under the Espionage Act. No, it doesn't require selling our nation's secrets to foreign, adversaries. If you mishandle or improperly disseminate, like if I'm sitting in my office giving an interview and I'm talking to people who don't have security clearances about a national security document, what have I done? I've disseminated some information that violates the Espionage Act. So it's all a matter of degree, and it will impact the kind of criminal exposure he will have. But the fact is, it looks like he violated the Espionage Act.
There was another wrinkle today, CNN reporting that this document Trump was referring to. So this is all in the past tense. The DOJ had this. They knew about this. So they serve then a subpoena afterwards looking for this exact document, referencing General Milley, and Trump's team not able to produce that document. So what is going on? Does this raise more red flags about him just leaving military secrets, military plans? Maybe it was lost in the grill room at the country club. It's in the locker room. Maybe it's at the pool. I mean,
Dean, that's going to leave a mark right there. The fact that he had the document, he compromised national security by sharing it, disseminating it to others, and now his defense team is unable to produce it. Did he lose it? Did he sell it? Did he destroy it? When I say that's going to leave a mark, if he had turned it back in and said, my bad, I didn't realize, I didn't know, but here it is. I'm not saying he would find himself in Mike Pence territory where the FBI just said, the DOJ just said they will not charge Pence with anything, but he would find himself in a better position than not being able to produce it. Because I'll tell you, my mind goes to some very dark places with respect to why he can't produce it. But I'll tell you, he is digging his own grave, legal grave, deeper and deeper and deeper.
And you mentioned Mike Pence. So we know just from reporting, I don't think I've not seen the document. I'm not sure if you saw the document that reporting is referring to, that DOJ said there's be no prosecution of Mike Pence. And what is the key there? Because I imagine at some point there is a special counsel out there investigating Joe Biden on this very issue. And I have a sense we're going to see a similar conclusion. So what's the key?
Yeah, the key is knowledge and intent. Unfortunately, lots of people pass through the federal government and they leave federal service taking with them things they shouldn't. I would like to think that generally that is inadvertent, particularly when it comes to high government officials, Dean. I don't expect vice presidents are going to be down on their knees clearing out the bottom drawer of all of the cabinets in their offices. They're probably going to have aides do that. Donald Trump would have had a robust defense had he not opened his mouth and said, you're darn right I took them all because I had a right to them. No, you didn't, sport. But he would have had a defense. He has now given that up because of his own admission. But I think most people, whether it's Joe Biden as former VP, Mike Pence as former VP, look, people boxed up stuff and it ended up in my storage room or at my office. And I never even went through, when I move from place to place, I don't even necessarily open up all my boxes. Some of them sit in the basement for a while. So it's knowledge and intent. And it looks like the investigation into the Pence classified documents found no knowledge, no intent, no violation of the law, but an actual mistake. Mistakes don't result in prosecutions. Intentional criminal conduct results in prosecutions. And the timing of this, I think, is interesting. I don't know if they kind of push through it quickly because once Mike Pence formally announces, it's special counsel time, right? And that's the last thing I think any of us need is another special counsel. So that has now been resolved. And the next thing that I think we'll wait to hear is what the result of the special counsel investigation into Joe Biden's retention of classified documents, finds. It's probably going to similarly result in no charges.
I'm chatting with Glenn Kirschner. So Glenn, again, more information we're getting that, and this one is about Georgia. We learned this, the Washington Post reporting that the investigation into Trump and his allies is broadened to include activities in Washington, D.C. and several other states, according to people with knowledge. And what the reporting suggests that this might be tied to the state's RICO statute, which apparently is very broad, and that Fani Willis, a current DA, as an ADA, as an assistant district attorney, used it very effectively against teachers, administrators in a RICO action for some kind of testing scam. So when you hear about what's going on in Georgia, what is your sense as a former prosecutor?
So I don't leap to the conclusion that Fani Willis will use Georgia's RICO statutes, though she may very well use them. You know, RICO is basically a glorified conspiracy. A conspiracy is an agreement between two or more people to commit a crime and at least one act toward the commission of the crime. RICO generally is you go after enterprises or organizations, and you have to prove a pattern of racketeering activity. But all that means is two crimes that by statute are defined as racketeering activity or rack acts. So it requires more than proof of a simple conspiracy, but not necessarily a ton more. So now we have this reporting that she is off in other states collecting up information and evidence about Trump's misconduct. That could be because she is bringing a larger conspiracy or racketeering case, but it could also be because she's collecting up what we call 404B evidence. That is evidence of other crimes committed by the participants in the crime that's being charged in Georgia to show things like an absence of mistake or accident or a pattern or an MO, modus operandi, method of operation. You can bring in lots of other misconduct by the person that you are indicting to show that, for example, Donald Trump wasn't innocently and mistakenly saying, just find me 11,780 votes and declare me the winner. So I'm not prepared to leap to a conclusion about what Fani Willis is or isn't doing, but what she is clearly doing is broadening her investigation to include even more misconduct that may have been perpetrated in other steps as part of the evidence she's trying to develop in her Georgia case.
And, you know, the Washington Post article today reminds us at the CNN town hall, Donald Trump said about calling Raffensperger, quote, "You owe me votes because the election was rigged." And I'm like, this is just remarkable stuff.
It's remarkable. And what people, again, this goes back to how Donald Trump might feel good in the moment saying this kind of stuff in town halls and when he's being interviewed by, faux news networks. It's all going to come back to haunt him in a court of law, because people need to know that when a defendant makes a statement like that, that is admissible evidence against him at trial, whether he testifies or not. It's called a statement of a party opponent. And let's face it, so people might not understand all of these exculpatory statements. I didn't know, and I really thought there was fraud and this and that. None of that will see the inside of a courtroom, because the defense cannot introduce into evidence the statements of the defendant. Only the prosecutors can, and we only pick the incriminating ones. The only way Donald Trump's story will be presented to the jury is if he testifies. And we've seen him in depositions. We know how bad that turns out for him when he takes the stand.
I wonder if he's on trial, if he takes the stand, I'm going to tell my story. We'll see. So, Glenn, look, this Tuesday is 2 years and 5 months since January 6th. In that time, thousands, hundreds and hundreds have been charged. The Oath Keepers and Proud Boys were charged with seditious conspiracy. They were tried. You even have Stuart Rhodes sentenced already. Yet Donald Trump not charged with even one crime. And none of this happens without this guy. Yeah. What's your sense on January 6th related charges from the DOJ?
My sense is that we sort of remain in this holding pattern, which I think is deeply unjust, where the boots of the insurrection, the people that Donald Trump ordered to attack the Capitol, are going to prison, and not a single member of the command structure of the insurrection, what I call them the ruling class criminals, not a single one has suffered 1 second of accountability. That's wrong. There is no justifying that. I am shocked that we haven't seen at least lower levels, maybe the people in the Willard War Room, the Giulianis and the Stones and the Flynns, maybe the Bannons. We haven't seen them indicted and squeezed so you can flip your way up to the bigger fish, the Eastmans and the Clarks and the Meadows and the Trumps. So I'm deeply disappointed that DOJ has not moved as swiftly and as fairly and even-handedly against them as they have gone after the boots of the insurrection. That's a failing of our DOJ. They're succeeding in other ways, and I always hasten to add that my friends and former colleagues at the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, Dean, are in court every day, banging out these insurrection cases one after another. I attended the Oath Keepers trial, some of the Proud Boys trial, and they are doing heroic work as public servants. So I don't want to sweep them up into that criticism, but DOJ needs to work its damn way up the criminal food chain and start going after some of the members of the command structure of the insurrection.
We've been talking about this forever. I mean, that's why my excitement or energy, and I no longer can invest in that, because I feel like at this point, either it's going to be charged or not. There's nothing we can do because we're so far into this. The charges should have come a long time ago. But I'm chatting with Glenn Kirschner. Let's shift gears. And this is the Republicans' effort to try to prosecute Joe Biden. The GOP House Oversight Chair, James Comer, said FBI Director Wray has confirmed the existence of a FD-1023 form alleging then Vice President Biden engaged in a criminal bribery scheme with a foreign national. So first of all, what's an FD-1023 form? Have you dealt with those as a prosecutor?
I was racking my brain. I don't know that I ever saw an FD-1023. So what it is, it's an unverified account of something a confidential informant said. The operative words there are unverified and confidential informant. It's basically like raw intelligence that may be reliable, it may not be reliable. Now, the gold standard of FBI forms are FBI 302s. Those are official records of what they do in their investigation. First and foremost, they're summaries of witness interviews, but they also cover other investigative steps that the FBI takes. Those are the things that get provided to the prosecutors, for example, as part of the investigative file in the case. And we actually have to turn them over to the defense attorneys in the event the FBI agent who authored a 302 testifies, because it's what we call Jenks information. It's a prior statement of a testifying witness. So that's the gold standard. These FD-1023s are not something that really play a part in our criminal investigations and prosecutions. And I think the Biden spokesperson characterized this Comer snipe hunt, perfectly. They said, this is a silly charade, period. And then there's some follow-on reporting, Dean, that this document was apparently generated by whom? Rudy Giuliani. So you can take it to the bank, right? Because, truth is not truth and alternative fact. Come on now. So this is really further evidence of the weaponization of Congress to obstruct justice in favor of Donald Trump. And Dean, again, I hate to always beat up on the Department of Justice. I compliment them when they deserve it. I beat them up when they deserve it. This is what happens when you let insurrectionists entrench themselves in Congress. For example, Jim Jordan is issuing congressional subpoenas when he criminally defied a congressional subpoena. This is governmental insanity. And that's why it's so important to prosecute people without fear or favor or privilege, because if you don't, you have insurrectionists running sham investigations.
And what's remarkable when you look at the reporting, and there were some links, and I went back to the original reporting. This document about some alleged bribery scheme that Joe Biden was involved with, it comes from a tranche of documents Giuliani gave to Bill Barr. And Bill Barr had a special U.S. attorney in Pittsburgh look at it, and nothing came of it because they knew it was BS. And even Barr said, There's a lot of agendas in the Ukraine. He goes, we can't take anything we receive from the Ukraine at face value. It was all tied to the Ukraine. So even this was given to Bill Barr, to his DOJ when he was AG, and they found nothing clear because they would have investigated because it's Trump. He had no choice to investigate it. And now the thing Comer is doing, and even Chuck Grassley, is we don't care what the truth is. We just want to see the document. So they go like, look, we found a document. The FBI said in this document that Joe Biden, the man we know for 40 years, is somehow now as vice president taking money under Obama to change policy.
And Dean, when the Grassleys of the world say things like, look, we don't really care if there's any there, we just want to, use this to our political advantage to smear Joe Biden. What does that have echoes of? That has echoes of Donald Trump telling President Zelensky, first of all, I'm going to bribe and extort you using congressional funds, which is a crime for which Donald Trump has never been held accountable. But look, I don't want you to conduct an investigation of Joe Biden. I just want you to announce one so we can smear him because he's my political opponent. Grassley and Comer are trying to do precisely the same thing, and it's pretty darn transparent.
And it's also, you're exactly right. And also reminds me, remember he told DOJ Trump in like December 2020, just announce an investigation, leave the rest to me and my Republican buddies, my co-conspirators. He didn't use the term co-conspirators, but we know that and we'll take care of the rest. All he wants is this imprinter, like this kind of like legitimacy to an investigation because it's on some document. Doesn't matter the truth of it. And they still go in the old playbook. That's all Comer has. That's all the GOP has. So this is the same old BS. I mean,
it is. The next thing you know, Jordan is going to look into whether Biden had anything to do with that Lincoln assassination. I mean, come on now.
They're going to time to everything. Whitewater. We're going to be going back and so very last thing, I just get your reaction here. And this is very Trumpian, but I interviewed Peter Strzok about his book probably 2 years ago. I think we were during COVID. And he mentioned that he had concerns some FBI agents were worried that if Trump got back in power, he would do to them what he did to Strzok and to McCabe, Andy McCabe, and James Comey. And now we're seeing this reporting, true or not, that Trump wants it out there, that he's been asking for names of senior FBI agents and Justice Department officials who've worked on federal probes into them, because if he wins, he's going to quickly and immediately purge them. And it seems like he's doing that kind of messaging that if you work on a case to prosecute me, if I get back in there, you're gone.
And people, I don't know if they appreciate how unbelievably corrosive that is to law enforcement. I look at what Bill Barr and John Durham and Donald Trump did investigating the investigators that were legitimately looking into potential crimes by Trump and company. If somebody came to me when I was a federal prosecutor, Dean, and said, you're being assigned this investigation, and I ran with it, I conducted it as aggressively and honestly and fairly as I could, and I reached a conclusion. And it was a conclusion that my boss, the attorney general, didn't like. So he turned around and said, now, Glenn, I'm going to investigate you for doing your job. You know how corrosive that is to law enforcement? And listen, it's no surprise that Donald Trump is already asking for an enemies list within the FBI. Look at what he did to Jim Comey. Look at what he did, as you say, to Strzok. Look at what he did to Andy McCabe. Look at what he did to his criminal friends and associates. He weaponized the Department of Justice against his enemies, and his criminal associates who actually pleaded guilty like Mike Flynn or were convicted by a jury like Roger Stone got a damn walk.
Yep.
That's obscene. And the fact that we haven't aggressively dealt with all that, Dean, really, it's shame on us, the present day us, because we're giving people carte blanche to do it all over again in the future.
It's unbelievable, Glenn, but I appreciate so much your insight and thoughtfulness. We went through a lot of topics here today, and we both share the same frustration now over DOJ and not prosecuting Donald Trump. I hope before this is over, one day we have a conversation about January 6th related indictments against Donald Trump. But Glenn, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it, my friend.
Great being with you, Dean.
Have a great day.